Choosing someone to take over a role from another actor is never easy, especially when the original actor drew praise for their take on a character. But recasting is often an unavoidable fact of filmmaking, especially for sequels and remakes. Whether it's creative disagreements, financial setbacks, or simple timing issues at hand, actors often become unavailable to resume their roles and must be replaced. Sometimes, the newcomer can blend right into the blockbuster scene unnoticed. But in the case of these casting switcheroos, the change was just too drastic for audiences to endure. Clarice Starling. When director Ridley Scott signed on to direct the Silence of the Lambs sequel, he did so without his Clarice Starling in place. Anthony Hopkins had already negotiated a return to the role of Hannibal Lecter, but Jodie Foster didn't share his enthusiasm for the second chapter in the serial killer's story, despite winning an Oscar for the role in the first film. She later told Total Film, "The official reason I didn't do Hannibal is I was doing another movie, Flora Plum. So I get to say, in a nice, dignified way, that I wasn't available when that movie was being shot. But Clarice meant so much to Lambs director Jonathan Demme and I, there was no way that either of us could really trample on her."
Now that's really interesting, Clarice. I'm really pressed for time.
Several big-name actresses were considered to take her place, and the part ultimately went to Julianne Moore. While both Scott and Hopkins were happy with the choice, audiences weren't as convinced. Moore was inevitably compared to Foster and couldn't measure up to her predecessor's screen savvy, nor rekindle the creepy connection Clarice had shared with Hopkins in the first film. Jodie Foster offered her own diplomatic but shady take on the film, saying simply, "I saw Hannibal, I won't comment." Evelyn O'Connell. The Mummy was a surprise smash for Universal, posting global receipts of $415 million and landing on the top 10 highest-grossing films in 1999. It launched Brendan Fraser's career as a Hollywood action hero and introduced the world to a stunning new leading lady in Rachel Weisz. The pair made a compelling on-screen couple and reprised their roles in The Mummy Returns, which managed to bring in a nice haul from the box office as well. But by the time the third film came around, Weisz was suffering from some serious mummy fatigue and stepped aside. Weisz was rumored to call the script for The Mummy 3 crap, so the studio turned to Maria Bello to fill in for the role.
That should give us a good advantage.
Unfortunately for Bello, her turn in the role was criticized for lacking the charm of the original, and the film failed to recoup its production cost in the domestic box office.
Why am I laughing?
The Genie. The 90s marked a moment of resurgence for Disney's animated film collection, with films like Beauty and the Beast and The Lion King offering a new generation of children some cartoon movies to sing along to. One of Disney's most beloved films of the era was Aladdin, an Oscar-winning take on the Arabic folktale about the street thief who sheds his rags and won the heart of a princess. Aladdin was packed full of great musical numbers, but the main reason it became such a smash was the input of the late Robin Williams as the Genie.
It's all part and parcel, the whole Genie gig.
Phenomenal cosmic powers!
The actor confirmed that he wouldn't be lending his voice to the direct-to-video sequel The Return of Jafar, after an alleged row with Disney over its marketing tactics. So the search for a new Genie began. Dan Castellaneta, the legendary voice of Homer Simpson, was ultimately chosen to voice the big blue guy, but the Simpson star just couldn't measure up to Williams' frenetic performance. The quality of the animation didn't help matters, but Castellaneta lacked the unpredictability that Williams brought to the Genie, essentially doing a watered-down impression of his predecessor.
Dope!
Jack Ryan. There are 5 films based on Tom Clancy's Jack Ryan books, but only one actor has played the protagonist twice. Eyebrows were raised when Alec Baldwin was given the boot after he successfully debuted Ryan on screen in The Hunt for Red October. Baldwin later implied that the studio had gone behind his back and entered into negotiations with Ford to take the role of Ryan.
Well, that was a guess, but it seemed logical.
Even so, Ford's performance in Patriot Games and Clear and Present Danger became definitive for the character. 8 years later, another actor stepped in to bring a much younger version of Jack Ryan to the big screen. This time, it was Ben Affleck who stepped in for the sum of all fears. His performance in the role was met with disdain, however, and the Jack Ryan franchise never really recovered after that, despite an attempt to reboot it with Chris Pine in the lead role more than a decade later. Sarah Connor. Following in the footsteps of Linda Hamilton as Sarah Connor in the Terminator franchise was never going to be easy for any actress. Hamilton gave a performance so layered and compelling that even the most talented performers have struggled to do the character justice. The first to give it a shot was Lena Headey, who was cast in the role in the short-lived TV series Terminator: The Sarah Connor Chronicles. Fox canceled the show after 2 seasons, citing its high cost as a reason. But Hetty's Game of Thrones colleague Emilia Clarke was willing to give it another go on the silver screen for Terminator Genisys. The film was a box office dud and was heavily criticized for using the old time travel chestnut to rewrite the beginning of the Terminator story to suit the filmmaker's purposes. The main problem wasn't the infuriatingly muddled timeline, though, it was the casting. As much as TV lovers might dig Clarke's portrayal of Daenerys Targaryen in Game of Thrones, the film crowd was decidedly not wowed by her run as Sarah Connor, where her line deliveries packed a lot less punch than the original.
Come with me if you want to live.
Pass. Van Wilder. National Lampoon's Van Wilder isn't going to be preserved in the Library of Congress National Film Registry anytime soon. Yet, for all of its failings, fans of a certain age remember this movie fondly. This was a time when frat humor was at its peak, and sitting down to watch a comedy usually meant turning your brain off for 90 minutes. Van Wilder might not have been the most cerebral comedy of all time, but Ryan Reynolds still delivered as the fast-talking cool guy who threw the best parties and was a softie underneath all those crazy antics. After the Kal Penn-led sequel was destroyed by critics, the producers decided their next move was a prequel featuring a younger version of Van Wilder. So they brought in Mean Girls' Jonathan Bennett for Van Wilder freshman year, which was a terrible mistake.
I have never seen such a sorry display in all my life.
The actor couldn't come close to the charisma of his predecessor and produced a feature-length, failed impression effort as a result. Willie Mays Hayes. Major League was a surprise grand slam for Paramount Pictures and produced 2 increasingly terrible sequels. And while Charlie Sheen's Wild Thing came back for a second round at the mound in Major League 2, there was another standout actor from the first film who refused to run the bases of this franchise again. Wesley Snipes, whose charming swagger as the speedy base thief was a home run in the first movie, had no interest in returning to the dugout for the second movie. At the time, he was well on his way to becoming a Hollywood MVP in his own right, thanks to movies like White Men Can't Jump and Demolition Man. So he pretty much priced himself out of the second movie. With the Cleveland Indians down a man on their roster, the filmmakers turned to relative newcomer Omar Epps to sub in as a pinch runner for the project. Unfortunately, Epps didn't have a strong background in comedy, and his performance was the cinematic equivalent of a foul ball.
Read some of your reviews, man. One guy said Willie Mays Hayes couldn't play dead.
Just a bit outside. Albus Dumbledore. The Prisoner of Azkaban might still be a favorite among some Harry Potter fans, thanks to the arrival of Sirius Black and that wild, whomping Willow. But the fact remains that it's the lowest grossing movie in the franchise, and for many, the subdued enthusiasm seems to stem from the unfortunate arrival of a new Hogwarts headmaster in the film. Richard Harris's take on Albus Dumbledore in the first 2 movies had become definitive for Potter fans, so when the actor died after a battle with Hodgkin's disease, the filmmakers had to turn to another actor to step into the beloved professor's cloak. Michael Gambon seemed like a fine choice to conjure up for the franchise, but his performance in his first run as Dumbledore was stunted by the fact that he never read the books. Rather than resuming Harris's spellbindingly calm and wise demeanor, Gambon delivered a much more stern and aggressive version of the character for his first few outings.
Harry, did you put your name in the goblet of fire?
No, sir.
You asked one of the older students to do it for you?
No, sir.
You're absolutely sure?
Yes.
Gambon would later summon up the same sort of chill pill that saved the role from being ruined for children across the globe. But these moments of mismatching between the beloved book character and the screen interpretation still cost the movies many house points in the eyes of the true Potter fanatics. Catwoman. Halle Berry taking over Michelle Pfeiffer's role in Catwoman is perhaps the most infamous example of recasting going terribly wrong. DC's leather-clad heroine has appeared in numerous Batman adaptations over the years, but Pfeiffer's psychotically sexy performance in Tim Burton's Batman Returns remains the cat's meow.
I don't know about you, Miss Kitty, but I feel so much yummier.
The actress initially intended to reprise the role in the Solo spin-off, but after years of development woes, her patience reached its limit and she decided to concentrate on other commitments. After a rigorous recruiting process, Berry was ultimately chosen to climb into the catsuit, and what a mess it all was. The film was a complete disaster, bombing hard at the box office while cleaning up at the Razzies. Berry took her worst actress win in good humor and even turned up to accept her award in person. Batman. Another error in judgment from the Batman universe occurred when Michael Keaton handed over the keys for Wayne Manor to Val Kilmer. Keaton had portrayed the role in 1989's Batman and its sequel Batman Returns, but he refused to reprise the role in a third film after reading the screenplay. When pressed for details, Keaton later said that the script he was shown sucked, and that it was just awful, pointing the blame for his departure squarely at the writers. Val Kilmer clearly didn't share Keaton's opinion. The Tombstone star accepted the role and went into the film knowing he'd have to contend with a wide cast of wacky villains as well as a new director. Joel Schumacher ultimately shouldered a lot of the blame for the badness of Batman Forever, though his leading man didn't escape criticism.
What am I?
Please! You're as blind as a bat!
He was quickly replaced with George Clooney in Batman and Robin. The good news for Kilmer is that Clooney's turn as the Dark Knight wasn't any more loved than his own. And soon everyone forgot about Kilmer's turn in the Batmobile.
Forget it, take it off. It's Val Kilmer.
Oh, you're an actor.
Thanks for watching. Click the looper icon to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Plus check out all this cool stuff we know you'll love too.